All right, here we are, Board Game Officer. We're going to go through about 7 different things that can make it so you win Tiny Epic Dungeon almost every time. So I hate to say every time because, all right, it's not going to be a foolproof plan, but me and my friend have played with these strategy and we have yet to lose with this strategy. That's going to be at least 15, 20, 25 plays. So it's not foolproof, I'm sure, but it is a very, very good strategy if you're trying to, or if you're having a hard time winning. Following these plans can really, really help you. They've made it so we pretty much win every time. There's been times where it's still really darn close because it is a tough game, but we win most of the time now with this strategy. So I kind of want to share that with you today. We're going to go through 7 things here of how you could win almost every time as long as your rolls are good. So, number 1 rule is the explore free action. Now, this is very, very important to do, I think, at the very beginning, is to do this free action that's found on the torch card. Right here, for free action, you can move the torch track down 1, and you could open up 4 rooms that are adjacent to you, as we can see here. So this is amazing to do at the very, very first thing you do. No matter who goes first, this is what you do at the very beginning. Because when the torch track goes down 1, they're going to activate, which actually does nothing because nothing is spawned yet. So you go down, that really doesn't hurt you in that part, and then you get to open up 4 rooms. And what that's going to do is that way when you start to open everything up, you start to really see what the dungeon is going to look like right at the very beginning. So you flip all these over. Now, this is where it's not a foolproof plan, right? If you spawn 4 goblins, good luck, right? That's only happened to us once, though, throughout all of our plays. And we had the right character, so it actually worked out okay. But I think it's a risk that you have to take. Because what this is going to do, this is going to lay out what your dungeon is going to look like. It's going to get all the cards out for you, so then you can start counting your cards. And that brings us into number 2, is to know your deck, right? If you're playing with 2 characters, you know that the first 9 cards are not the minion, right? You know that they are just random cards. You know the first 4 were laid out. That means the next 5 are not going to be. So when you lay it out, you count 1. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we know that these next 2 rooms, 10 and 11, now we know that these 2 could be the minion. Now, this is where it comes into the next one of building your dungeon. So once you count the cards, you know where the minions are going to be or where they possibly could be. That means when we start to explore, I don't want to start running up here. Right? Running up there, exploring the dungeon is not going to be super beneficial. Yes, it'll get you some goblins. It'll get you some goblins to get yourself loot, right? But the problem is then when you open these up, it's going to build the dungeon that way, right? And so that brings us to that number 3 one that I just mentioned was building the dungeon. It's, right, the dungeon explorer, but it's better to think of it as a dungeon building. You are building the dungeon how you want it to be. That means if the minion cards are here, you know that you want to come this way right off the bat. Once again, it's not a foolproof plan. Yes, one of these could be the minion. And having the minion after only killing 2 goblins, right, get a little dicey, especially if the wrong minion comes out, right? There's definitely risk to this, don't get me wrong. But it'll save you. Like, the torch track is not even a thing, usually, for when we play. Like, we're not pushed for time whatsoever. This is the biggest thing about building the dungeon, is we want to keep on this side. Because if one of these 2 are the dungeon, or the minion, sorry. If one of these are the minion, that means we're going to have a minion here. If we start exploring this way or this way, then the other possibilities of the minion are going to be over here. So then, if we have a minion here, and then we have a minion over here, and then if we're just like messing around, and we get the dungeon or the boss layer up here, now we're going to be really, really tough and screwed to try to get that boss to one of these minion spots or the altar spots, right? Because they're all over the place. And that's what I mean by building the dungeon, meaning, hey, I know that these two could be the minion. So I'm going to start exploring this way. So the next, 5, 6 cards could also be minions, are going to be around here if one of these two are a minion. That way, if you build your dungeon correctly, right, you're building the dungeon, you will have all of your minion cards here along with the dungeon layer. That means at most, usually we have to move the boss 3 at most to get him to the first altar. Doesn't always work out perfectly, right? Because you run into the corner, you run into dead ends. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but that beats having to go to all 3 different corners of this dungeon to get all the minions or to get all the altars for the boss. So that's what I mean by building the dungeon, is you want to be able to count the cards so you know where the minion might be and then go in that direction. Then once you find the minion, so let's say you found both minions right here, right? Perfect, they're right together. Now this is building the dungeon. You don't want to come back up here and open these up, because if you still have 4 cards left, right? Because the ending is always 4. If you have at least 4 cards left in your deck that you're building out, you don't want to come up here and open these up, because that means you're going to be placing a possible boss layer all the way up here up top when all of your minion altar spots are down here. So you want to try to stay as close as you can to try to build down here, trying to get the boss layer next to one of these spots as close as you can, right? So you want to stay as close as you can to one of these spots so you can get that boss layer near the minions, right? Building the dungeon, I think, is the most crucial part, and part of building the dungeon is counting the cards, right? Knowing the possibilities of what cards are there, knowing where it might be. If you flip over this room, you're going to be spawning 3 rooms, up to 3 rooms from that area. What could those be? And are those around other cards that I want them to be around, right? So we want to kind of build the dungeon knowing what's in the deck and what's going to come up next. So that's my first 3. The next one is kind of controversial, actually, is ignoring traps. So we have a trap right here. So if I open this room up, right, and I don't want to come here, right, this might be a room that I'm not interested in because I know it's not a minion and I know it might not be a boss layer, then I am just going to move. I don't care to disarm this trap. The only time that you need to disarm a trap is if past it is the dungeon layer. That is the only time we ever disarm traps, right? If we know we have to get the boss back and forth through that, so we know that we are going to have to move back and forth through this room to manipulate the boss, then you disarm that trap. If you do not need to disarm that trap, turn around, go another way. Once again, not 100% of the time, but I would say 90% of the time, if you don't need to go that way, turn around, walk away, go another way. Go look for other cards, come back if you have to. If it's like, okay, that is the only card that's left, that could be the minion or it could be the boss layer, then I'll go and check. But I'm not going to go waste my time disarming this trap when I could go take care of goblins or take care of a minion or do something else. Now, that also takes me down to, if you have time, right? If you've got 5 or 6 rounds and you already know where the boss layer is, yeah, go disarm a trap, get some loot. No problem with that, right? But don't disarm it just because you revealed it. If you revealed it, go ahead, roll so you don't get injured, and then walk away, unless you have to go through it for whatever reason. So that is number 4. Number 5 is also debatable, and it kind of makes me sad to do as well, is actually ignore the room abilities. All these rooms that have these special abilities that you could do different stuff at, 90% of the time, they're not going to help you. They will help you at some reason for sure. I'm not saying they're not helpful. But there's usually better things you can do. If there's a goblin, you need to take care of the goblin. If there's a room that needs to be explored, you need to explore it. Wasting a I guess the free actions, that's not too bad. But especially when you have a search action on a card like this one, where you could search to get something out of the discard pile, it's taking your heroic action. You don't want to waste it on a card unless you have the time. But if you're still looking for the minion, if you're still looking for that boss layer, if you're still actively trying to get through the game, it's not worth it. It's not worth it 99% of the time. Unless you already have the time and you're just exploring and trying to get loot. So I would say room abilities, which makes it sad, right? Because it's cool that the rooms have different abilities that you could do and you could try to do other stuff because that room was out, right? The free abilities is probably the ones that are mostly used that we use, but hardly ever do we use anything that has a heroic action on it. Usually there's another better reason. It's not bad, but there's something better that we could do with that heroic action rather than, searching or anything like that. So ignoring those, that way we're not wasting turns to do something else, that we're still taking care of what needs to be taken care of. Number 6 here is going to be, you need to be exploring every single turn. 80% of the time. Meaning, you need to be sure that you're actively opening it up and not just being scared of those goblins that are spawning. Yes, we need to take care of the goblins. Yes, you need to take care of the minion. No exploring. So I'm going to backtrack there. Opening up unless there's a minion. If there's a minion, don't explore. That is only going to hurt you to get more goblins. Because when there's a minion, you need to focus 100% on that minion to get it away. On both turns, on every single active person's turn, if able, to attack that minion to try to get rid of that minion. Because they're going to do damage, they're going to hurt, they're going to take a while to get rid of sometimes. Now, depending on how many characters you have, right, you want your main focus to be on that minion. You might need a person or two to sidetrack and take care of the goblins that are spawning in between turns. So, explore a tile every single room, or every single turn, unless you have a minion. Don't explore if you have a minion. Or 2, if you have 2 to 3 goblins, I would say at least 3 to 4 goblins, don't explore, right? Take a turn, manage goblins, take care of 1 or 2, and then continue to explore. That's going to be kind of based on who you're playing, because there's some that have area effects, so they're not too scary. If there's 2 goblins, it's fine because one person can take care of multiple people, right? So it kind of depends on which character you're playing as well, on whether or not you're going to use that. So explore every turn unless there's a minion or unless you're being overrun by goblins. If you have 2, maybe 2 depending on, but at least 3 or 4, don't even explore. Take care of the goblins as much as you can, and then continue onward. So now the last thing is going to be the boss. All right, so here we have the boss. Now, I want to point, so I've got 2 rules for this. We actually started changing it lately, but so I think both ways work, depending on who you have and the equipment and who the boss is, right? So I'm going to tell you these 2 different reasons, or 2 different strategies. The first one is, the first one that opens it. Now I want to point out that this is a free action, meaning you spend this action that opens them up. You do not have to move into the dungeon or into the dungeon layer. It is a free action to open it up. You're just using the key, opening the door, and you look inside. Meaning you don't have to go inside yet. So that's my 2. The first one is to go in. The second one is just to run away. So the first one is you're going to have that first person go in there, go in as far as they can to get some good bonus, and then do 1 major attack, try to get their health down to that altar token to get them down as much as you can, because you're going to have some pretty good bonus if you can. All right, so that's a very good one, right? Always just depends on who you have, who's going in, how much movement, right? But if you could go in and make a good strong attack, try to get the health down as far as they can, and then that's the first person. Then the second person is not going to come in, right? Because the health is already down as almost as far as they could go. They're going to run away and taunt the boss. So then the boss is going to come out, right? So this boss is going to taunt. It's going to come out, and he's going to taunt them as much as he can to at least 1 altar if he can, right? Once again, this comes back to the building the dungeon, so he can on 1 turn hopefully get him to an altar so he could place that on there, and then just attack right then and there. No more moving, no more trying to go back to it to waste more focus to get him to come back to his so you can get a couple more hits. All that does is waste time and focus. What you want to do is, once you bring him out, just attack him hard right there. Right? Because he could attack hard. Next turn, he could come out and do another big, and then you just do a dice battle right there. And hopefully if you got a big strong attack right there at the beginning, that only takes maybe a couple turns to finish him off there. So that was the number one strategy. What we've been doing lately is, depending on who you have, sometimes coming in here, right, you could get that +2 strength to that roll right there. But I could only hurt him, if I'm playing with 2 characters, I can only hurt him 8. What if I rolled and I did like 10 damage? I actually just wasted 2 damage that I couldn't hurt him. What, right? Once again, this is circumstantial. Right? Here, 8 damage is kind of a lot. But, right, kind of circumstantial. So sometimes it's not always smart to come in and do a big hit if you're wasting hit damage, right? Because you can't go as far. So what we've been doing lately, which has still been working out great, is we open up, right? We don't have to do anything. And then you run away and you taunt them right out. And you taunt them out of there as soon as you can. Because then, right, just you can start wailing on them. Just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then it's just a fight to the end. Right? There's no other strategy you could do. The only other thing you have to be careful with is spawn, or goblins are going to spawn. But if you look at here, right, if you got 2 players, only 2 goblins are going to spawn the entire time. If you have 4 goblins, then 4 goblins will spawn. But you have a lot of time. So the goblins do not spawn near as often as here. But activations happen a lot. So that's where you really have to be more focused on, okay, if I could survive this activation, cool. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm just going to keep wailing on him because I could survive, and I just need to do damage at this point. Once the boss comes out, you just need to do damage. If you have potions, use your potions to add damage. If you have anything, use it to add damage. This is actually kind of a bonus that I was just thinking of. Is if you have potions, if you're playing with the potions and perils, so this kind of add on because you're not always playing with the potion and perils. I love playing with the potion perils. I think it is really, really good to use because you get those +5s or more health, or get all your focus back. And we usually save them. We usually don't touch those potions until the boss. If you save those till the boss is super, super easy. Usually, right? Depending on what potions you have. But right, if you could have a +5 to your strength attack, like that's 5 extra damage that you're gonna do. So even if you only do 1 or 2 damage with your dice, +5, that's still 6 or 7 damage that you did on a bad roll. So that +5 could do a lot. Or there's ones that you get all your health back, so you're not gonna die. So you could spend another turn attacking him. Or there's one that you get all your focus back, meaning you can get all your one turn, use all your focus. The very next turn, you can have it all back and use it all again. Right? There's another one that can give you actually extra movement and extra action. So you can actually attack twice, right? Those potions, however, they kind of hurt when they first get them, but they can make a huge, huge difference with the boss because they'll add a lot to it. I think that is a very, very important thing. If you're playing with potion and perils, save those potions unless you absolutely have to beforehand. But if you could save those potions, that is what's going to really, really help with the boss, I think. I think that's a big thing to get rid of that boss there. So, those are my tips and tricks to at least 90% of the time win the game if you follow by these rules. Some of them might seem kind of crazy, like the traps or ignoring the rooms, right? Or exploring every single time. Like, some of them might seem a little sketchy, and sometimes they are, right? Opening up at the very beginning, you could get 4 goblins. But the risk is worth the reward because usually it's going to be that one time that you die right off at first, but then you'll play again and it won't happen. You'll be able to go to the end and win, right? So a little bit of risk, but I think these strategies will help you win a lot. If there's any other strategies or thoughts that you have, please put them in the comments below. I absolutely love this game. I've gotten a lot of great comments on my other videos I've made. Check those out if you want to just see these strategies played out. I've made 4 videos now, 1 regular and then the 3 levels of the stories where I use this strategy a lot. throughout that. So you could kind of watch there and see how I play. That I win most of the time. Now, so that is it. Thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And thank you so much.